recently did a video on wage gap and how it impacts women in the workforce. And it was very well received, and we got a lot of questions as a result. And one of those questions was, do women negotiate salary as well as men, or is that one of the reasons for the wage gap? And the reality is that's a difficult question to answer, but in general I can say that women tend to be more hesitant to ask for what they think they might be worth than a man does. Is that an absolute, or is that always true? No, but as a generalization I think it's fair. So ultimately the purpose of this video is to help women negotiate their salary. And ultimately we're specifically talking about two scenarios. One, where you may get a promotion internally, or two, where you may be negotiating a job externally. And really the interesting thing is the process is not very different. So when you are in a negotiation, there's a general rule that the first person who offers a number will lose. In this situation, I think that's absolutely true. So if you're being offered a promotion and at that time they ask you, as you're being promoted, what are your expectations from a salary perspective, or what would you like to see as you get this new role? The answer is really important, right? And this is where I think we can eliminate some of the wage gap that goes on in corporate America. I would say I'm only looking to be paid what's fair based on my skills and experience, as well as what's appropriate for this role and on par with my peers who are doing a similar job. And that way you've put multiple angles on it, right? Obviously you're looking to take a step forward from a career perspective and from a compensation perspective, but you are now being asked to be paid at basically what's fair for this role. And if you're underpaid and you don't even know it, that's going to give you the opportunity to step forward more than maybe you had anticipated. And ultimately it puts some pressure on the hiring manager and HR to make sure that they are viewing it in that lens and making sure that they are comparing your current compensation and what they're about to offer you to others in similar opportunities, which they may or may not do without that guide. Meaning they may just look at it and say, you're making X today, we're going to give you a promotion, so we're going to offer you Y now as you go forward. Well, X and Y may be under market. So you want to make sure that you're asking to be at market rate when you ask that question. So the same is true if you're being offered a job externally and you're thinking about switching organizations. So when you're being offered an opportunity, you will absolutely ask the question, what is it you're looking for this role? And again, I will let you know that the first person who gives out a number in any negotiation typically, not always, but typically will lose. So you want to let them know, you know what, I'm only looking for what's fair based on my skills, experience, and the requirements of the role, and to be paid fairly relative to other people doing similar things within your organization. So now the next question that we typically get is what to do if I'm working with someone who doesn't give me that option. Meaning they're going to ask me how much I'm making or what I'm looking for, and they're not offering anything until I share that data, which is honestly the way I would handle the negotiation if I'm working with you, right? I'm going to make sure that we get an understanding of where you want to be. And when we do the negotiation, we work very hard to make sure it's a win for the candidate and a win for the client. And that can be a difficult balance, but to do that, we want to have data, right? Ultimately though, if you're in that situation where they're saying, what are you looking for? And you ultimately are being asked to give that information first, I would basically make sure that you have as much of an understanding as you can of what you feel like that position is worth, what it is you're looking for, and then assume that they're going to come back slightly lower, right? So ask for, it will depend somewhat on the level you are in the organization. You can get away with asking for a little bit more when you're the chief marketing officer than you can when you're the senior manager. So it will depend somewhat on your level, but ultimately if you're looking for X, I would be asking for X plus 5 to X plus 15%. One of the things that you need to be very careful of, especially if you're relocating, is that you understand cost of living differences and that you factor that into the process, right? Too often we find candidates will ask for a certain amount of money and feel like they've done great, but not have factored in the cost of living piece. And ultimately that goes in both directions, meaning if you're going somewhere where the cost of living is lower, that gives you some opportunities. And if you're going somewhere where the cost of living is higher, you want to make sure that you're covered yourself.